is sensational for Cincinnati. Mitch Hildebrand, the hero, and the underdogs.
The Flying Lion says,
boys, hell is real.
2023 Supporter Shield champs.
So glad that I can be back with people who know that it's a Flying Lion.
It shows how much we all love this club.
Yeah, just a fan of the sport, you know.
It's definitely tougher to be in a catch player than it is a pro.
In this club, you don't play just for the club, you play for the ball.
Swap, card of the week, trivia question of the week.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Flying Line podcast. FC Cincinnati offseason, right? In full swing. Thought we'd bring back another returning guest who, once again, needs no introduction. We're joined once again by the man behind the keyboard, or, insert whatever writing utensil you want to put there, pen, pencil, keyboard these days, most likely. But staff writer and club reporter for FC Cincinnati, Carter Chapley. Welcome back to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I prefer a feathered ink quill right now, and then we scan it and put it on the website. It's really, our budget is just out of control for the ink this year. So,
well, of course, it's probably like FC Cincinnati. Like you have like a full it's orange and blue. It's
both multicolor. You got to make sure you have the right like you have one ink set for bold and one for italic. No, it's good to be back with you guys though.
Yes, welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. We wanted to get your immediate insight on what we heard yesterday from Chris Albright. So I guess overall, your thoughts on what he had to say as a whole.
Yeah, it's always great to hear from Chris. We don't hear from him very often. But when we do, it's insightful and I think an honest look into where he's at with the club. And I think yesterday, Tuesday afternoon, it's a 35 minute long press conference. We don't get that's really long for different industry. Like that's a very long press conference. And so he kind of just stood up there and went all 12 rounds with us in the media. And by the end of it, there's we had no more questions. Yeah, there's nothing else to ask because we've gone through the ringer. I think it was an interesting insight into what the club sees as the next step forward. A lot to be proud of, undoubtedly, but not reaching the goals they set for themselves, right? Like they set the tone and they set the goals for themselves, and they recognize that. And I think it was insightful to hear him say, I don't know if accountability is the right word, but hear him say, we didn't reach those goals, and we are looking at ways to change that. We're looking at all the different ways. We're doing really high level conversations. We're not just going to go status quo or keep things normal, keep things the same. We are going to change the way we do things because we think that that's what's needed to move on to this next. He called it year 5, which is the 5th year, to have a refresh into year 5. And I think you can be proud of what's all happened. And I think there are a lot of people who are, and they should be very proud. And then also see what Chris is saying and go, yeah, I'm excited for change and to see how things are different for 2026. And I don't know what else he could have said that would have made people happy. So I think him getting up there and saying that is an interesting step into 2026.
It's honestly refreshing too.
You talk about yeah. I mean, Carter, you said 33-minute interview, right? I think the initial reaction, not only from FC Cincinnati fans, but I think just Cincinnati fans in general, immediately, right, based off of also certain clips that we'll talk about, but was the fact that you don't see this out of any other Cincinnati franchise, right? Somebody kind of just, hey, ask me a question and I'll give you an answer, right? I mean, there was a lot of good this year, right? But we didn't reach, where we thought. So it was refreshing to kind of get that.
It's interesting because, I'm not a Cincinnati native. I've been here for only, better part of 3 years now, but I think that's an accountability that's very unique in pro sports in general. I think in 2025, in every pro sport, this is not Cincinnati specific or MLS specific. In every pro sport, there is a desire to consolidate, to turtle a little bit, which I very much understand. I mean, I'm a writer, and when I see something negative feedback from the public on something I've said or written or that I didn't say, but I had to but I just kind of conveyed information, I turtle. I feel the same way. And so it's very courageous and bold, upfront and honest of Chris. It kind of shows you who he is, to just kind of go up there and be like, here's what we're doing. Proud, but we're going to make changes, and that's what's good. And that's because we want to win. We want to do the best we can, and I think that's nice. And then 33 minutes. You take it. He just sits there and takes it 100%. So it was good. It was a good afternoon. Very insightful.
In getting to the nitty gritty of it, a couple, I guess, questions, maybe your insight on it, we kind of heard from what you had to say, in your tweets as well. But one being with Ayoub Jabbari and the club officially signing him now. It sounds like, this is a very specific profile that Chris and his team had been kind of looking for. Does that tell you anything a little bit about the way FC Cincinnati might go about 26 then?
Yes, I do. I think that's a really well framed question because I do think it does. I don't want to get too caught up on like Ayoub specifically, though. I think he is very specific of that, like them going and getting that profile. I think what points as interesting. Chris said that it is a very specific profile that they feel helps unlock the combo of Evander and Kevin Denke, who are the two highest paid players, most invested players in the team. And so to me, it says is like, okay, you're looking at players to help unlock that relationship, that compatibility, getting them synced on the field in a different way. To me, that shows, and he said it earlier in the presser, but like that is a high priority for us going into 2026. It is a high priority for, we saw it, you saw it, the public was right, that Kevin and Evander, while being at training in a preseason, you do see that they have a really strong relationship. They really like spending time together. They didn't quite click on the field in every way you'd like to this season. And so they are invested in making sure that works and making sure it clicks. And they feel that Ayoub can help with that. His skill set can augment whatever they're doing. And so that becomes very interesting to me as to show as a kind of a wayfinder, a direction to follow of like, this is what the offseason looks like. This is one of the things we're trying to do, and this does that. And I think that's what's interesting with Ayoub. And then I liked that he said he looks like he can play for the Bengals because he absolutely can. It's like,
being
guy is unbelievable.
I mean, he's a beast up top. I mean, we saw it, right? I mean, we saw flashes in 2025. Right? Obviously, didn't get on the score sheet, but you saw the hold up play. You saw kind of like how FC Cincinnati did play while he was on the pitch. Whether it be next to Brenner or next to Denke, and there's definitely potential there. It's interesting that they may, once again, play style, right? They may play more over the top rather than in between the lines, just depending on, once again, opponent and stuff. But now that you have Jabbari up top, makes it a little bit easier.
But now you can do, I think what's interesting there is like now you can do both. Like you can play between the lines with the midfield and Kevin, or you can go up top. But then also, it's not like Ayoub is a slow, like he's at 6'4". Yes, he's big, he's strong, he's fast, he can move. He's not a slouch in terms of his technical ability. Like he is is he the tiki-taka kind of king? No, but like he can do it. And so I think it's interesting to see a guy who did a lot of selfless things and how that adds to the dynamic in a more drawn out way next year. Like I think he appeared in 8 matches in all, like in the playoffs, and like we didn't get to see a lot of these guys for a long time. And I think he's an interesting addition to the offense. Is he the day one starter? Who knows? I don't know. But like, if he ends up being that, I think he's interesting, and I think that's a good investment.
Yeah. Do you think? So Sam and I had talked about this. Ayoub Jabbari and Kevin Kelsey, jersey size. Like, who's got the bigger one? I think they got to be pretty similar. But
yeah, you'd think. Well, I think I was reported that Kevin like intentionally asked for like a couple sizes too big.
Yeah.
And that was part of it. But I think definitely if we were just going true size to fit, they're probably the 2 biggest we've had.
Yeah, got to be. Another note, another younger player, if we look at Dado and his interesting situation right now, kind of cool to hear from Chris and saying like in his end of the season meetings with him, like, look, man, I'm willing to get on the field any way I can.
Yeah.
Now that we've kind of heard from him, and the way that they want to get the young players involved, it sounds like at least in some ways we're trying to get Dado more involved, to this team any way we can, and he's trying that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that is the specific read I took. I think what is interesting about this whole shift is that the refresh, so to speak, is that like 4 years ago when they come in, they built this kind of system out that was somewhat designed, and by system I mean style of play, formation, the way they recruited, the way they thought about building the team, based on what we have, what we can get, and how do we get better, and how do we get our best players on the field. And that really worked for how do we get Álvaro Barreal on the field, right? Well, that time's now gone, right? And 4 years have gone by, and Dado is a Chris said it. It's not a lot of 20-year-old Americans running around doing what he can do. He's a very as a number 10, that's a very unique skill set. And so I think the interesting thing about this refresh, and when Chris says everything's on the table, we are more interested in how do we reach our goals, and then our goals being, and credit to him, he doesn't dive too deeply into these goals because you still have to keep some things close to the chest. There is a degree of if you tell everyone what you're doing, that becomes a lot harder to negotiate for in the offseason and then do in the preseason. But okay, so who are the best players now? Who are the players you want on the field? And in the past, we have seen Dado play as a forward. He's not a forward. He's a 10. We've seen him play at a 6 or 8. He's not a 6 or 8. He's a 10. It's unfortunate for Dado that for the last 3 years, this team has had an MVP finalist caliber or an MVP winning caliber number 10 on the field that kind of blocks that. And this team has not played by virtue of the system they created with 2 10s. And we have seen them play with 2 10s, but it hasn't always put them, each of those players, in the best position possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with Dado, it's a question for the entire roster, right? How do you get, you look one step back into the midfield. You've got a midfield of Pavel, Buka, Obino Obodo, Sammy Gidi, Brian Anunga, Evander, Dado. That's 6 really good midfielders. That's and you want guys on the bench who can come in and be starting caliber players, but how do you maximize the team to get your best players on the field? Sure. And I think that's what's interesting and exciting about a refresh, or about the way that Chris talked about it, is that, hey, maybe a new formation, maybe a new style of play, maybe it's the same style of play, but we're thinking about the way we're doing it so that it's actually, we don't need 2 defensive midfielders. We actually have 2. It's just whatever the thought is. And so for Dado, I think they said he's a talented young player, but like every player on this roster, I think he mentioned it a couple different times. If someone came in for Kevin Denke for 150 million, you're going to take the call. If someone came in for so and so for X number of dollars, you're going to take the call. Yeah. But that's part of what a refresh looks like, and everything's on the table. And so I think that could mean something really good for Dado. That could mean something really good for everybody, though. Mm-hmm. It's not just one player. Even though I think Dado Chris says it best, he gets called into a U.S. national team camp because of his quality, right? That's a sign. But from that conversation, it sounds like, hey, they recognize Dado's talent and they're looking for ways to help the team in general.
Yeah. So if he stays, Carter, let's say Dado stays, he doesn't get sold. Realistically, does he just get the same minutes that he did last season? And then, because Ryan and I talked about during our 2025 recap of, you've kind of seen this trend over the past couple of years with these young players, right, who play either because of Leagues Cup or Champions Cup, or even throughout the season, because there are injuries, there are certain things that happen.
Sure.
And then after, let's say, August, right, the minutes kind of dwindled, specifically for Dado and some other young players, Ender or whoever came in new. But where do you think he kind of fits?
I think that's an interesting question, in that can't tell you right now. I think that's part of the refresh, is we'll have a better picture of what that looks like in preseason, sometime after those couple preseason games. But I couldn't tell you that about anybody. Same thing with hey, who plays wingback right now if they stick with the wingback? Who plays who is the 2 starting double pivot if they stick with the same formation, right? I think we have a pretty solid beat on the spine, from the Roman, the keeper up through the middle. But other than that, it's hard to say, and I think it's just too early to say. But I think, to your second point about the minutes shrinking, I think that's probably true. Not only in this team, but every team in every sport. Year gets longer, you start consolidating because your starters a little bit more, because there's fewer games, literally fewer games, but B, more important. Like the playoff games are,
Right.
hey, if you can have your key guys playing longer and longer, there's less opportunity for the guys down the bench, but they have to be ready for those minutes. We saw that happen a couple times. But I think that's like, you look at the NBA, for example, like you go from having a 9, 10, 11 man bench to you start going 6 or 7 deep, and that's probably what you're comfortable with, right? Like it just happens. And so I still think it's in terms of specifics, I think it's too early to talk about any one player besides maybe like, I think it's pretty safe to say like we're penciling in Miles Robinson, Evander, and Kevin Denke, and then like Roman Solentano into their spots. And until new information emerges, I feel pretty comfortable with that. With the rest of it, like what happens if they go to like a 4-4-2? What happens if they go to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-1-1, like who knows, right? Like that will be a better determinant. Like we will understand better the roster and the players on it when that time comes.
I guess that kind of, you're talking about the wingback position and kind of the question mark. Obviously we hear about Lucas Engel, here recently, and then the news just breaks before we're recording here that apparently, there's interest from Real Salt Lake for this re-entry draft. Can you kind of walk us through? Because I mean, obviously a player on loan, he's owned by Middlesbrough now. But
someone should tell Middlesbrough that he got drafted. I wonder what they'd say to that.
Yeah, like what's going on with that, man?
I think that's a situation with the redraft, and with like I've seen this happen when I covered it wasn't quite the redraft. I don't think it was the redraft. Maybe it was the expansion draft when I was covering St. Louis in that first like 6 months when they got started. That they took Indiana Vassilev in the expansion draft, but he was on loan to Inter Miami from Aston Villa. And it's like, someone should probably tell Aston Villa that like, like that guy got moved to a different team because they didn't agree. They sent him to that team, not that team. And eventually it all got worked out. But like, to me, it's probably a situation where like, if Real Salt Lake was interested in him, and they could be very interested in coming to an agreement with Middlesbrough, and and they've been working on that. Yeah, why not? Like you either have to do that or pay for a discovery rights, or like this is a way to this. Hey, let's like. But also like, I think I saw the MLS PR Twitter like tweet about who got 2 guys got taken in the second round of the re-entry draft. Like, if you don't end up signing them, you didn't. I don't know how much you lost. Like in terms of, like, hey, you got in early on it. You were okay. We got him. We're interested. Let's talk. If not, if it doesn't work out, they didn't lose anything. So if Lucas is back in MLS, I'd be excited for Lucas.
I think Carter froze on us here. Sorry about that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Hopefully we'll get him back here in a second. But I think that's interesting though, Sam. Just in talking about this situation and hearing it right before we record here.
On the Lucas Engel front, I'm not, oh, there he is. He's back.
I don't know what happened. Don't know what happened. Just all of a sudden, browser just disappeared. Don't know what happened. I was saying if Lucas is back in MLS, I'm excited for Lucas. If he's somewhere else, I'm excited for Lucas. He's a good guy. Wherever he ends up is good.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been interesting, at least again, hearing from Chris about all these players, a little bit of movement, we're hearing outbound. Inbound wise, we haven't, obviously heard a ton yet. And I think he's obviously talking about this refresh and how that kind of factors in. In talking of all that, do you think any comments that he made yesterday kind of flew under the radar in the terms of how we're looking for next season?
Well, I mean, I thought it was some stuff always flies under the radar, like him saying, like pretty specifically, we're in negotiations right now. Like there will be changes. People will like the roster is not set. Like that, we can assume that, but like him saying that just kind of is like, you might not be hearing it, but it's happening. Yeah. So I think that's for one interesting. I thought there was an interesting conversation to be had. I'm not sure what. It depends on what you define as fly under the radar, because like my opinion of fly under the radar might be different than like what the public generally picked up on. I thought the thing that the public picked up on was this comment about like the gameplay being stale. Yeah. And like fixing and like changing that and like, but I thought maybe one thing that flew under the radar that we'll probably make it into my column next week. It's probably not going to be in the one tomorrow, but is him saying that like, they've been working on this, like some of these conversations at the higher level since July. Like that like this is a conversation that's been happening since probably the end. Like I think he said July. I'd probably guess is what he means is like the end of the transfer window. Like the business is done in that window. Let's look to the future. And that, hey, it's the coach's job on the field to win games. It is Pat's job to like, this is the situation you have. Do the best you can with what you have. It is his job to then take the 10,000-foot view and go, okay, what's happening next? And so it's encouraging to like what I think is perhaps. Listen, like you can think what you want about this season. I'm not going to tell anybody whether they're satisfied or unsatisfied. I think Chris said it pretty clearly himself. Good season, not like we didn't achieve our goals, but we have a lot to be proud of. I think it's very interesting for him to say we've been thinking about this for a while because we've seen it too, right? Like this team was successful, but the style points weren't there necessarily.
Right.
We should be smothering teams. The play at TQL Stadium was stale. It killed our fan base. So we weren't giving them enough to give us the energy back that we needed. It should be, I think what's the word he used? It should be convincing that like our the success. And I think it's interesting. I think it might have flown under the radar a little bit that he's kind of said, not explicitly, but I think my interpretation of what he said was, we've been thinking about this. Like, but like when you're in a shield race, which this team was up until basically the final day, you go for the trophy. Right. You do you don't blow it up because you don't like how it looks when you're a point back of the shield, right? You don't blow it up when you're in the playoffs because you go for the win. You do what you can right now. And so I think it was interesting to hear that and to say like, hey, this might be further ahead of schedule, these conversations, then we didn't wake up or like further ahead of schedule, or we didn't wake up after the Miami game and go, oh my God, what happened? Like it's not, I think that's interesting.
Well, and especially like, we talk about other, teams obviously around Cincinnati, but just in general, like this team has won the most games in the last 3 seasons. And this guy's still saying like, hey, we're not satisfied. Obviously we're winning. We're close to winning a trophy, but we still have more to do. Or even the style points, like you said, or the way that we play has to be kind of more enticing. And how do we now match that, to the results as well? And again, that's just super refreshing to hear from your GM. And it kind of backs what everyone, again, was thinking without even us having to say it necessarily, as well. So the one thing that was interesting that he kind of compared was like this offseason more to 2023 going into 24. What did you kind of make of that in the stability wise? Because I think, if we look at the spine, we talked about it now, there is that good stability. Whereas last year, we didn't necessarily have that a ton. So now that we have that, how can we build on that? Yeah,
I think that's kind of an interesting point for next season in a bigger sense is that like, like I said earlier, like, I don't know what the formation is going to look like. I don't know who the players on the field are going to look like, who the starters are, so to speak. But I know there is like you can look around and see a really solid core. I think he said 9 or 10. It could be as many as 11 or 12 of like key pieces are in place going into this offseason. And then he knocked on wood and like said like, "There's I'll probably like leave this and get a phone call right away or something." But like it was being funny, but like it's true. Like last year, like I remember going down to Clearwater. And the Lucho situation hadn't been resolved, and it wouldn't resolve itself for weeks. And Evander didn't show up until didn't get to the preseason until like the last day or two. And I think it's kind of like one of those things that I find it's hard not to like kind of chuckle to yourself when you're like, well, they trained all year. Like, what's the difference? It really can't be understated how valuable like a month of training only on yourself, not thinking about who you play this weekend, not thinking about like who starts or doesn't. This is the team working on like setting the stage for the season. Hey, if you're going to make a change, you do it now because you have 4 weeks, 5 weeks of nothing but focusing on this, and then you can continue to build on that. And there's to Chris said, there's 14 guys into the team this year that were new. That's half the roster of guys just kind of parachuting in and not having that foundation. And I remember I spoke with Sammy Guidi and Ender Echenike at the end of season media. We had a little one-on-one, and they both kind of talked about how like you show up and like the club makes you feel really comfortable. They take care of you. They make sure that, but like training is like intense and scary, and like it's like we're going at 1,000% because it's October and we have to win this weekend. when you show up in preseason, you can kind of figure things out and learn rather than just be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. So drinking from a fire hose, I think, is the corporate speak of that, right? Like, so I really can't. So I think when you look at the differences between 24, 25, preseason 24, preseason 25, preseason 23, it's a lot of the same pieces coming back.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of the same pieces we know, like we kind of have a sense of, there's obviously changes inevitable, but like you have a picture of what the group is going to look like, and they're going to be able to work on stuff all month. I think that's a encouraging indication, and that's why it's so similar to 23. And then it's easy to invoke that, like, hey, that happened in 23 and you won a trophy. Like, that's kind of it's not a bad comparison, right? Like, I think listen, like, are they going to have new players in during the, like, after training camp at the after the World Cup?
Yeah,
I wouldn't doubt it, but this is where we're at right now, and I think it's a better core of guys that and Evander, if Evander Kevin is your talisman of offense up front, last year you didn't know who'd be in the number 10 spot.
Right.
That's harder to plan for. So
very
similar. I think it's more similar.
Looking back kind of at the 2025 season a little bit, you talked about kind of roster, what we're looking at. Where in the course of the year do you feel like the roster was the strongest throughout the 2025 season?
I mean, this is, I don't know how else to say this, but like, I think it was the end of the, like, I think the team was at its best, like, at the end of the season. Like, I think even like the kind of asterisk on that is like, is everyone healthy? Yeah. Like, is like, how does health, because I think there's probably a period of time earlier in this year, I'm not sure when I could identify it, but like, maybe you could have convinced me that having Matt Miazga in the back line was more conducive to winning than Brenner in the top. But those two things never.
Would that have been like sometime in maybe like June, right? When we were
it's like I think there was I'm trying to think, because we didn't during the Club World Cup, because I think we didn't play. I think we didn't play at home during that time, and like we went on like a 10 or a 6 game winning streak.
It's pretty solid, yeah.
And like, but so like, I think you might be able to convince me that the team was better with the back line at full health than if Brenner had been there at that. You know what I mean? Like, but I don't know, and I think like it's probably ends up being at its best at the end of the season, and then like, listen, like the 2 playoff games where you lose 4-0, like, I just don't. Chris comes out and says, "You lay an egg. It's unacceptable. We need to be better." I think if you like in 10 years' time, when you look back at those games and you can remove yourself a little bit of emotion, one of them is a red card game in a game where you're like, no point in just pull the goalie, like get everyone out of there so you can get out safe for game 3. Right. And the other one is, against Miami, is it fun? Is it awesome? No, but like after you go down 1 or 2, you send everything forward and you get beat the other going the other way. It happens. It's not as if this was like for all, like, it's not like you got played off the field by either team all season and it was like, wow, we just really weren't up to stuff. So I probably feel comfortable saying the end of the year is when the team goes best.
But that's the sad thing, right? Because you're like the best team, right? Got 8 games together.
Yeah, and like, hey, that's why they're changing the schedule, right? Yeah. Like that's part of why they're looking to change the schedule. Like a lot. Now, is it 1-to-1 comparison? Maybe not, but that's what they're looking at.
Sam and I talk a lot about, obviously the Shield talk too, in comparison to MLS Cup. But, if you remove yourself from the fact that North America and, this sport we talk
playoffs,
about, absolutely being the priority. But like we said, this team was the best by the end of the year, but we're still 1 point off the best in the league over 8 months. Like that's pretty good.
Yeah. And like credit to Philly. They were really good all year. Like 100%. You can't win the supporter shield without being good all year. And like, hey, Miami, who you lose to in the playoffs, also had the same number of points you did. Like it was a 3-horse race all the way to the finish for the Shield, and those are 3 really good teams this year, and 2 of them got trophies.
Yeah,
had you got it, but then Chris comes out and says, "Hey, not good enough. Got to do better." So you do better,
right?
Like that's how. It sucks, but it is what it is.
Right. Yeah. On a kind of a lighter note, Carter, every time we've had you on, we've asked about favorite away days from the season. So this year, what takes the cake?
Well, we got to go to some new places. That was really fun. I got to go to Salt Lake City for the first time. That was pretty cool. Got to spend some time with some fans there. That was fun.
Portland?
LA. I'd never been to LA. I've been to LA as a social visit, but I have family who live out there now, so I got to spend some time with them, and it was a 2-day trip. That was great. Portland was a electric match between like the drama and the storytelling, and Providence Park is like awesome. I think that's a great venue. I really wished we got to go there and it wasn't so hostile, but like making it like as hostile as it was, that made for a great story. Like I have so much respect for those Portland fans, and like, do I love what they said about Evander and how they treated Evander? Like, no, but like,
right.
This is like, we're talking about the same Bailey that like every time Messi touches the ball, you boo. Like there is a, like there, I think there is a real shared passion for the game in those two cities. That I think is interesting, and that was a really cool trip. That's a good shout. That was a really cool trip. And then Honduras, got to go to Honduras this year. That's an adventure, right? Yeah. And we'll go to Dominican soon.
Next.
So
the fourth different like country, right? That you get to add
but we're going back to, but like hypothetically, we go back to Monterey for a third straight year, and I'm like, come on, like anything else but that in the draw. Like I'm getting like that, like. God, like listen to me complaining about like the blessings of being able to go see the world watching soccer. But like the same hotel in God, like that sucks. But no, it really is I am blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously away matches we always relish. Like, you talk about Portland, like Ryan and I look at the away matches on FC Cincinnati's schedule every year, and this upcoming season, right? I mean, Minnesota. It's gonna be
back to
really
Minnesota
for you, Carter.
Yep.
I mean, early in the year, what are we?
That'll be fine.
What are our thoughts? Yeah, I mean,
it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Like we're like listen, guys. Like, what's funny is like the thing I find really funny is that like every time we ask Pat Noonan about like, hey man, schedule change. Like, what do you think? He's like, I would rather play like. He doesn't exactly. I'm paraphrasing. I am answering kind of in tongue in cheek in the way he answers, but like, I'd rather play in like the freezing cold blizzard than in like Dallas in July, or like it's like to that. So if that's what they say, listen, I'm in the press box. It's warm. Like I can wear a coat and little mittens and like a hat. Like I'm not worried. If they're saying no, like I'd way rather this than 110-degree weather in the middle of July, or training all week in 110-degree weather, like in the middle, like I'll take Minnesota. Like
he said that like the guys play better in the cold because they
the system that they want to run is better because you can press, you can run, you don't get so drained by the humidity. Stay warm. It's good. It's a good example. Yeah, that's funny.
And talking about, obviously a little bit about, next year as well as we kind of transition. Dom Kinnear is leaving the club, MLS legend. He's been great, for this team as well. Any kind of thoughts, in seeing Dom go, and then what that might look like? Because it sounds like we're going to be maybe a little bit more analytical coming up too. Is at least what he's saying in that spot. But
I don't want to compare like Dom, like suggest that Dom isn't analytical or like a hyper plugged in
Dom versus AI. Is that what you're
right. Yeah. Like, really the Dom Kinnear bot. No, I think like when Chris says like what he's done for this club, and for them personally, like I can extend literally to like what he does for our comms and content team, how he has helped set a culture at this club of both like competitiveness and winning, but also like working together and being and like you can see it every day. This is a guy who wants to row everyone in one direction. And I think to cut what he has done to come in and kind of be the guy who helps Pat in his first head coaching job and Chris in his first general managing job. And this is a guy with so much experience that like knows how to do this kind of stuff. And he has helped carry these first 4 years. And it's sad. It's sad to see him go personally. Like, but that's what Chris, hard conversation, and Dom is going to land on his feet. Like I'm absolutely confident about that. But when they say they're looking for something new, like, it's very curious. It's very interesting as to like hear Chris say that and say kind of like be more in line with the I don't even want to say analytical, because I think the way he said it, and I want to be really specific, is like in line with the conversations that we're having, which is like, not to say that Dom wasn't in line, but like, hey, if we're making changes, part of how we're viewing these changes is who is going to augment that. It's all going to be part of one big process. And so I think when Chris says they want to drive towards higher XG, what does that mean? I don't know. XG can mean a lot of things. It's like they want to be more smothering. They want to be more decisive. They want to be okay. So typically Dom was leading the attacking group more often than not. Though I think I don't think it's as simple as saying like in the NFL, like, oh, offensive coordinator. Like, I don't think that's how it is. I think it's more of a collective effort where like you kind of have your focuses. That's my impression of it, at least. That might not be 100% true. Maybe I'm totally off. My impression of that is. And so, okay, so like, what does that look like? How does an offensive minded coach come in and massage that a little farther forward? Very curious. I have no inclination or sense, but I'd imagine, based on everyone Chris has brought to the club to this point, they're probably going to be a really experienced and smart guy who can be on target with whatever they're going for.
No, yeah. I mean, on that, to kind of, I know we got limited time with you, so we'll close it out.
I think I got 7 more minutes for you. So
all right. So I Talking about more of the 2026 season, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as like going forward, flexibility wise, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about how the roster looks right now, how much real flexibility, because I know there's a lot of turnover, right? I think Chris said 14 new players, right?
Yep.
So coming into this offseason, you talk about, hey, we've got solidified guys, right? We can be a little bit more decisive, right? Rather than, we just need bodies, right?
Yeah.
What does that flexibility look like to you going forward, looking just at roster construction? You look at all the trades that have happened within the MLS already so far, like big names.
Free agency is open. There's some really interesting names out there.
Yeah. Like how does that look in your opinion? Like,
yeah, I think in some ways you could consider, like, I think there's 2 ways to think of it. It's like, one is that like, oh, the hard work is done. I don't think that's true, but I think you could look at it as saying the hard work is done. You got Kevin Denke, you got Evander, you've got Miles Robinson as an anchor piece. You've got Roman in net. You've got Pavel. You've got Sammy. You've got Obi. You've got Ayoub now as a solid. You've got defenders on the back line: Nick, Teenage, Gilberto. We talked about Luca and what his future could look like at the club yesterday. Matt Miazga was brought up yesterday as to what his situation is on picking up his option. And so I think you have a really solid core around you. And so if you're going to make holistic changes for 2026, the conversation is probably more about like, all right, so we know what we have at the core. How do we paint around the edges? And if we have to paint around the edges, or augment is maybe a good word, like in the same way that we're thinking about Ayoub as like unlocking, like a piece that helps unlock Kevin and Evander. How do you do that throughout the rest of the field? Because I think you have a really competitive, really high caliber roster. How do you do that around the rest of the field? There are some interesting questions. There are some interesting places, and there are some places where flexibility for high impact pieces could come in. Like reportedly Miles Robinson on a DP contract. We'll have to wait till the roster, all that, but like I don't think there's any reason to dance around the edges on that kind of reporting based on where it's coming from. You've got 3 U22s utilized, so you're pretty solid into that piece. But like the kind of like, I don't know if the dirty little secret is that like you can try and do all of your capology, and like, do we all have a Microsoft Excel sheet somewhere trying to keep track of like the salary cap? Sure, I see them everywhere. Like they exist. Like people try. Yeah, you can't. It's impossible. There's too many like elements of the salary cap that are not public and are impossible to know unless you are the general manager or a part of the brain trust of a team or the league. That like you just don't know how everything, like where the color by numbers is set, right? So Chris Albright has been, and so that's why I say the hard job is the hard part is not done. The hard part's not done because that's where you have to make your bones.
Yeah.
Is in the trenches of a roster. There's a little bit of is it easy to go out and sign a really great player like Kevin and Evander? It's not easy to sign them, but the desire to is really easy.
Right.
The pursuit of them is hard, but those guys are I really want those guys on my team. It's figuring out everything else and making that jigsaw puzzle fit. And so I think there is a lot of work ahead this offseason to better actualize a roster for next year. But I think, fortunately, we have seen in the Chris Albright era, he's really good at that. He is
Chris Cooks.
He is very good at finding the what do they call it in Moneyball, and finding the leverage, finding the places, the market inefficiencies, going out and finding a Brian Anunga. That guy started for this team really well all year long, and now he's one of 4. That's pretty great. That's a pretty great that's a pretty great pickup. He is Pavel Buka, pulling him out of listen, I'd imagine he was a really well thought of player in the Czech Republic. I'm sorry, nobody knew his name, and now he's the man, the Cincinnati guy.
Yeah,
that's that's where Chris makes his bones, and so I am fascinated to see what he does with this window, with this kind of time between now and training camp.
It's going to be a fun off season. A lot of, excitement to come. I'm sure, every week there's more and more, but Carter, thanks again for joining us tonight, giving some of your thoughts.
Awesome.
Sorry about your Billikens in the Final Four.
Hey,
NCAA, but
what a year. What a team. So happy with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the basketball team is rolling. They are. This is a good year to be a St. Louis University Billiken. That's for dang sure.
I love it. Well, thanks again, Carter, for joining us tonight, and
awesome,
we'll talk soon.
Talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.
Hey, everyone. The Flying Lion podcast is your home for FC Cincinnati coverage as a part of the Chatterbox Sports family. We're proud to be a part of a growing network of creators who are building real connections with fans across the region as the game continues to grow and in preparation for the 2026 FIFA World Cup hosted in America.
Yeah, and if you're a local business or a brand looking to reach an audience that's passionate, loyal, and plugged into the city's sports scene, this is the place.
Partnering with us is not just supporting a podcast. You're joining a community that celebrates FC Cincinnati and various other Cincinnati sports teams as well. So reach out through our email, which is Flying Lion Pod, FLYIN Lion Pod @gmail.com, or direct message us on social media to learn more about sponsorship and partnering options. Thanks again. Thanks again for joining us tonight. Thanks to Carter Chapley again for giving us his thoughts on the offseason, some of Chris Albright's, thoughts moving forward as well. A lot of insightful things there, Sam, a lot to unpack. This second part of the episode here, we're going to kind of hit some of what he touched on as well, give you some of our thoughts on that as well. But before we do, thank you again for everyone who grabbed one of our limited Flying Line t-shirts. We greatly appreciate it. Again, the support that you guys have given us throughout the past couple of years has been awesome. And we're hopeful to have many more of these to come out soon. Sam's got his shirt right there. So hope you guys are enjoying those. But Sam, let's roll into again, some of the news. We talked with Carter about it, but the big one, over the last week, at least coaching-wise, Dominic Kinnear departs from the club after 4 seasons. Again, just such a legend for the MLS, has won MLS Cup for different teams, but he's going to be moving on. We're not really sure where he's going. I'm sure there's got to be a coaching opportunity out there for him, again, with all his experience. What does this look like tactically? Go and check out, again, our conversation with Carter about that and what that might look, like moving forward, especially on the attacking side. But Sam, walk us through a little bit about what Ayoub Jabbari signing is looking like for next year too.
Yeah, so just details on Jabbari signing if you didn't see it. Contract through 2028 with a 29 option. Once again, Chris kind of said it in his press conference. He's a great compliment to Denke as a bigger body that can hold up play in a little bit of a different way than Denke can. And so once again, like we had talked about with Carter, he showed flashes last season. So ultimately He was cheaper than Brenner, unfortunately. And I think that it's, we'll touch on it here in a little bit, but that helps, right? It helps the roster construction, and you get a quality signing that, was playing in Europe, was playing in France. So
he's not a proven goal scorer is the only thing that like kind of is interesting. Obviously you bring this guy in, he's cheaper than Brenner. That's how it kind of works into our current setting. And again, if we're going to keep Denke, then you got to be able to sign somebody else to complement. And by all means, I really love the effort that Ayoub put in by the end of the year. The last several games, he was really working on the defensive end. He's a high motor guy, has pretty decent foot skills, and can win the ball in the air. So what don't you love about like a younger Kai Kamara mold, in some ways? So if he can be even somewhat productive, like I kind of compare it to Dambaji a few years ago, off the bench, even a fringe starter, we would love to see that. So interesting one there. We re-signed Alvas Powell, so friend of the pod, through 2026, option for 27. Again, just more depth on the wing, in more of a center back role in maybe the latter part of his career here. I think that's kind of underrated. It seems to be like they value that some more. I think it, like, shout out to one of my friends for saying that, Alvas in center back in the most meaningful games is inevitable. It just seems to always happen. So we'll see what that looks like moving forward. But yeah, I think again, it's a no-brainer just in terms of experience. He's not that, 1A guy, but he's going to be able to kind of put in that work for what we need. He does hit a senior roster spot. He doesn't go to a supplemental spot. So again, another senior roster spot filled up. Sam, a lot of announcements today in terms of Álvaro Barreal. We finally get closure though from this player.
Yeah, I know. Obviously the last time we had the podcast last week, it was, hey, Santos triggered it because he met the criteria. So they want him back. And then we get news earlier this week that, well, they activated the trigger, but they have not yet, reached an agreement with FC Cincinnati on payment, right? And you put this out. You retweeted what was out there. So Ryan, walk us through kind of what you found and what your initial thoughts were before obviously the news today.
Yeah, some pretty big, media outlets saying that, again, Santos has not paid $300,000 for the loan of last year for the player, and then this purchase obligation around $4.5 million. Again, we're maybe a little wary that they're not going to pay up for that. Although the news comes out today that he's officially gone, he's sold. Álvaro said his thanks online. Thank you for that. We don't have to put a timeline on when he's going to say thank you to the club like we did for Frankie. But yeah, again, what a player for, this team that he was through that early stretch of the MLS seasons. Had an amazing 2023, had a great season for Santos actually down in Brazil. But yeah, I thought like for a hot second there, like maybe there was no chance that Álvaro was coming back if, the other club was not paying. But still, we'll see what officially goes on and how does this affect the roster, Sam? That's the important question.
Oh yeah, and so the news obviously, right, like you said, came out. He's going to be with Santos permanent. I saw that along with that news, they didn't say how much, but Santos will be paying installments. They will not be paying the full lump sum. Okay. It looks like they would be paying installments to FC Cincinnati. Looks like, once again, there was an agreement. Obviously, the transaction went through. So hopefully we get our money because the roster needs it, Ryan. The roster needs it.
Yeah, so the amount of GAM or general allocation money that you can kind of put towards the roster will take a hit based on these transfers, we'll gain it, I should say. So, up to $3 million that you can get from these. If it's obviously $4 million, then you get that $3 million of relief in that GAM. What does it look like if Luca Orellano goes though? And how does that compile? I think it's yearly that you get that relief and not necessarily all together. But again, we're not like the podcast for the specifics of, the GAM, TAM and all of that. There's some good ones out there that you can go check out, but I believe that's kind of what it would look like. But as I talked about Luca Orellano, Monterrey, Sam, our old friends that bought one Brandon Vasquez apparently has put in a bid for around $3.5 million for Luca Orellano. We had previously, I think, rejected from Cruz Azul back in, February before the season. Back then, was it maybe about $5 or $6 million, for him? I think we bought him for around $3 million. So I'm sure we're looking for a little bit more, as we have again been rumored to have rejected maybe that first one. Who honestly knows, and maybe there's more negotiations going on. What are your thoughts? Like we've talked about this before, but if Luca does go, we don't really have a solidified wing back right now. He's a great talent. It's just about fit and the current people on the roster with him, right?
No, yeah, and I think the initial thing that you're seeing out there from a lot of people is let him go. Which
it's interesting.
It is very interesting, considering I've seen a lot of people that are like, he was brought in during the Lucho era, and without Lucho, how has he looked? So get rid of him. That's kind of been the attitude. But once again, you look back at Chris's comments, and Chris was like, we've had offers for this guy for the past 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Even when he was on loan, like people were like, hey, how do we get him from Vasco da Gama? Like, how do we, whatever. So obviously, once again, Chris did say, if it's a right fit for Luca, if it's a good fit for us, like, we would be stupid not to at least entertain the thought of allowing a player to leave. So
we'll transition this to kind of his comments though, Sam, because he says, I would listen to offers for all 30 players if it made sense. Like, how does that feel as a player to know that, like, hey, there's a number for you, to get sold? I think it was more of like, you have to pay him ungodly amounts. Obviously, you made the example of Denke for 150 million. That's more of kind of what he was saying. And clearly we need these players for this season. Like, he's not going to just sell everyone. But it is interesting, like, the way that he approached the answer about Luca, in the sense of like, I'm not going to say yes necessarily, but I'm not going to say no. Because again, he's a talented player. He's young. He's had several years of professional experience, and we need flexibility, honestly, is what it comes down to.
And Ryan, I think if you're a younger player, I think you take that to heart, right? But the older players who have been around for a little bit longer know the MLS, know the roster restrictions, know, just have more context, right? Once again, it's very clear that at the very base level, this is a business, right? And you're trying to not only put the best team on the field, but you also, are trying to make some money back, right?
Yeah. Sam, I'm not gonna like dog Luca Orellano, but there's times where I think, like, obviously players have agendas, whether they're playing for themselves, playing for the team. There's times where I think this guy's really just trying to show how talented he is. He knew he had kind of a down year, and he'd put his head down and dribble people and not necessarily pass when he should have passed, or shot when you get what I'm saying. And not that I think, like, moving forward, that's an issue, but we saw that, last season, I think this player was, interested or intrigued by this move. At the time, he wasn't making as much money. He got a, renewed contract through the team, so he's obviously happier. But what does it look like now if the club goes and rejects an offer again? What does it look like for him if he stays and then, trying to get the best out of this player, and he doesn't necessarily want to be here? That's a conversation, again, like Chris had mentioned, that, look, I'm going through talking with, one player and 18 player about fit, money, all of it. And I think, Laurel had a great question to Matt Miazga. This is kind of my bridgeway to Matt. Obviously Matt's back. We pick up his option, but when asked about Miazga, he says, we still have to navigate, all of these situations with these players. And, is there a little bit of jealousy? Like, that's just the reality of the business. And Matt's been great for us, but what does that look like relationship wise, between the two and on the field and off the field? And
I think that was more towards, like, the question that was asked and how it was answered was more towards the Miles Robinson being a DP, right? And Miazga kind of looking at that going, not only is he a DP now on my team, but he is also maybe, quote unquote, maybe taken a U.S. men's national team spot from me, right? So, like, you could also see in that from that standpoint. But Ryan, looking at other roster,
we've had a ton, over the past week.
We were saying last week, like, hey, we'll see if we get news. I think we got some news. It was pretty, but the worst news, I think, probably out of the week was just the realization that we all had to come to grips with, which was that Brenner's loan expired, and he would not be returning to FC Cincinnati in no way, shape, or form. Right? Chris Albright stated, there wasn't really much they could do. The loan extension that they kind of asked Udinese for got declined. So I guess Udinese wants the player back either for themselves to move him on to another European club, or I've seen, a possible return to Brazil, which I know you and I have talked about. Like, I feel like that would be kind of a downgrade for him, but maybe he'll get more playing time.
I think, Brenner being happy is the most important, and he was happy in Cincinnati. Yeah. He loved it here on his second stay. He put a ton of effort. I mean, that's the model player. If you're looking at guys on the field, like, this guy's putting in the work, and he's scoring, at a high clip because, he loves being here, and that's what you want, out of your players. So whether it's Europe or Brazil, I want Brenner to be happy. Ultimately, I know that's a cheesy answer, but like,
it's very touching.
That's what's most important. And again, it's unfortunate that this is like Chris had said, salary capped league that, we made a decision to make Miles a DP, and we have to kind of live with the fact that denies our availability to get Brenner. And that's the way that they want to go. So it just stinks because, again, he caught fire at the end of the season. And what does that look like if we had, even more of a preseason like Carter talked with us about? And how does he now build his relationship with, Denke, if that was the case? But one can dream, one could only hope, but unfortunately that's not happening. And we have to kind of move forward is really what it comes down to. Maybe there's a reunion down the line again, the first player to come back a second time to FC Cincinnati. He's still relatively young. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, one to follow. I hope it's not in the MLS. That would be really, really unfortunate to lose out, again, on the player for him to go somewhere else in America, or I guess Canada, too, counting the MLS. But yeah, Sam, past that, those were really the big things. Chris had also kind of touched on, I want to comment myself on the fact that, like, he's saying that TQL felt stale. And a lot of fans have kind of said, is that more of a jab at the fan? I think it's really what me and you are saying, all season long is we're winning, but there's no style points to it.
You're winning 1-0. You're winning 2-0.
Does that matter that you're winning? But like, they want to bring that excitement. They want to pound team. They want to win 4-0, 3-0. And so do the fans. But does that compromise, the winning? Is obviously the question, and that's what they're navigating. It's a refresh. It's not a rebuild. How many times have we heard that from the Reds, the Bengals? We're rebuilding the roster. We're going to, look at the salary caps and this. It's like, we have the talent. Let's try to maximize this and move, a couple pieces around. So again, super refreshing from Chris and all involved with that, because he didn't by any means have to do this.
No, yeah, and like we touched on with Carter, right? Where are you going to get this in any franchise in Cincinnati? So very, very nice for him to be able to put that out there and go, hey, we acknowledge that it was stale, right? And we're going to improve it, and we hear you guys, right? So on that, Ryan, you've got this question here. Just looking at the state of the roster, you can go down if you want, but
yeah,
the question that I see on the agenda here that sticks out to me is, would you be okay running a lot of the same guys back? And I would say yes, but I'm happy that we've acknowledged a tactical, right? Like, right. I'm happy because once again, we have talked about the quality of players are there. Tactically, something needs to change, obviously. So if we run it back the same, the tactics need to be different. The way we go about things need to be different in order for me to go, yes, let's fully run it back.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, Sam. I totally agree. I think you're obviously seeing a lot of change, but the core pieces are sticking around, which was different from last year, like we were kind of getting to in the first part of the episode and chatting with Carter. But tactically, yeah, like how can that trigger or unlock a team even more? And that's what in the middle of the season, like there's tweaks you can make, but you're not going to drastically, go, hey, we're going to just completely blow this up, especially with, how many new guys that were coming into the roster by the end of the season that are just trying to find their footing in the team, yet alone if you try to unlock it with, let's go to a 4-back, they're not going to do that. So this is the perfect time to kind of do that. You're exactly right about the fact that, like, tactically, though, there had to be the change. And Dom leaving, what does that look like offensively? How does that change things? Are they more willing to kind of go and be more risky in XG, especially expected goals? And and being that side of things. But Sam, the one thing that I kind of would comment on about running it back too is like year to year now in the MLS, it just seems like it's harder and harder to maintain good talent. Like if you overperform, it's harder and harder to keep those players in your club. Whereas overseas, like you could just give them, a better raise and then there's no restriction on that. So moving forward, how does that restrict us? What does that look like? It'll be really interesting to see. Does the league kind of make adjustments to that as well? I don't know, but I think I kind of liken it, if I may. Sorry to go on a rant here, but to the U.S. men's national team. For a while, we had been playing a 4-back, and we switched to the 5-back system that Miles is currently playing in, and it's really unlocked a better squad. And I really could see how a lot of that could change. Now, I could see the other side too from a fan base. You gave up, however many goals in the playoffs. How do we in the right mind run this back with the same people and expect different results? I get that. So that's where it's like you have to kind of build around the edges as well to find better complements for these core players. Really, is
when Carter was talking about painting around the edges, I was like, I thought we got rid of that kit.
Love that. I mean, do you agree though with that?
Yes. I on a serious note, yes, I agree with that. But once again, you like you said, got to paint around the edges, fill holes, and is that going to be in free agency? Are we going to see that here in the next couple of weeks, Ryan? What are your? I mean, we've talked about targets, right? That they can look at.
Well, the whole rest of the league is getting better, Sam. That's the thing that's frustrating. Obviously we've kind of now done all of our moves out. We've kind of solidified all the question marks are now, okay, this is what we have. How do we build forward? What do those conversations look like? And Dane St. Clair is going to Miami to be their goalkeeper. You have Philly is blowing up. They have center backs and their best striker going all over. So what are we going to do in free agency? That's what is interesting. In the past several years, like we've dabbled a little bit into it, but I don't think we've done a ton.
Should take Philly's left back.
Yeah, I mean, hey, Kai Wagner is there. Maybe. We'll see. It'll be interesting, again, over the next week. I think you see more inbound news come in now. Maybe some trades, but I think the guys you have probably, Sam, would you say, are probably the guys you're going to keep?
No, yeah, I think a lot of the times, especially with the guys we have, I think, like Carter said, I mean, there may be, 10, 11 guys that Chris looks at and goes, hey, these guys are staying. And the other guys could be tradable, but those 11 guys are too quality of players to trade within the MLS, right?
And at this point of the offseason too, maybe like as we get closer to it, like we're not going to blow up, this team again a month before because we got a $25 million offer for Vander. Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. But Ryan, other headlines that we got to touch on, just minor compared to what we just went over, but Teenage Hadebe, he got called up for the Zimbabwe national team for the African Cup of Nations, aka AFCON. Pretty cool honor. Hadebe helped Zimbabwe qualify for only the 6th time in the country's history, and actually the first time since 2021. So pretty cool to kind of see him do that. Any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, I again, good honor for him. I was going to look this up. I believe they actually start like in a week for AFCON. So he's going to be staying in shape and playing in some real competition. If you guys had followed along, one of Sam's card of the week at the end of the season was about swapping jerseys with Messi and kind of his agreement. He actually took Messi's jersey back to Zimbabwe and traded his jersey with a club owner over there that apparently was promised. Like they had an agreement. That apparently Teenage would deliver this to the owner, which I just thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the details of it, so I'm not gonna.
I just had seen photos circulating about it, and that he had given the jersey to him. It's just interesting. He was also named, Sam, the 2nd funniest player in the MLS by his peers. So a lot of what we're going to touch on next is all by the MLS Players Association and all of these awards. But kind of funny that Hadebe is there, tea time, as he's called around the FC Cincinnati world. Matt Miazga was named the second best trash talker. I don't know how he's not first, but Richie Larea apparently is first, and then Luis Suarez is third. Like, no surprise there.
Yeah.
But yeah, something that we already knew, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it was funny. I saw the Matt Miazga one first, and then I was like, Hadebe, second funniest player. Like, all right. And then I think today, FC Cincinnati also by the MLS PA got voted best pitch in the MLS.
New one or the old one?
That's a great question. I think both, right? But I'm still not sure because they just put out a graphic. So they have FC Cincinnati at the top. So I would assume we're either first or we're the Eastern Conference representative because Austin FC was the other club that was honored. So
shout out to the pitch people.
Yeah, shout out pitch people, right? And then as I was doing my little Ryan was talking, I'm not paying attention, right? So I'm researching something. But I saw that former FC Cincinnati player, DeAndre Yedlin, had just been voted best fashion in the MLS. So I mean that's a given, right? If you've seen what he did for FC Cincinnati and all the custom stuff he did with the club, very cool there. So those are our other minor headlines, if you will.
Can you imagine, like, at the end of the season, they're just like a survey and like, hey, by the way, before you leave, like, I need you to answer these questions. It's like, who's the best trash talker? It's like, this is the closing thing for
I'd
the
like to
season.
see how
like,
many players.
how are they presented that?
Yeah, how many players actually fill that out, Ryan? Like,
no idea.
I don't know. But
it's interesting.
So as we move on, kind of to the last point here of the podcast live show, whenever you watch and listening, MLS SuperDraft is going to be going on tomorrow, today, depending once again when you're listening, December 18th at 2 p.m. And FC Cincinnati only has one pick in the 3 rounds this year. We didn't have a pick 2 years ago because I think we used that to get Miles. So last year, Ben Augie is the one that we selected in the second round, I believe, from Gonzaga. So I don't know. We'll see. We got the number 55th overall pick in the second round, Ryan, and he's probably going to play for FC Cincinnati too.
They need some players, so
yeah. I mean, it would be the 6th player on the roster.
Did we trade? I think we might have traded away our first round for. I want to say it was an international spot, maybe
Real Salt Lake to get
maybe. Yeah. Again, like Chris values this less and less, each year. I still think it's kind of interesting because there's some pretty solid, college players out there that are, fighting to make rosters and to live out their dream. But yeah, we'll see what that looks like tomorrow. I think at least, we talk about super drafts, expansion drafts. There's no expansion drafts this year. So I think past super draft, like we've been through all of the re-entry, all of the free agency, all of that stuff. And we can kind of get a little bit of a better sense of things. So in kind of recapping this episode, again, a lot of interesting thoughts, from Chris Albright. As we move forward, it kind of, again, caps the 2025 season and kind of gives us a little bit of a glimpse, but not ultimately really either, as to kind of things going forward. But other than knowing that this team is in a little bit more of a refresh, how do we kind of maximize what we have and kind of move forward? One thought that kind of runs through my head, Sam, in the fact that now they're in their 5th year, with the club, is like the club's only been around for 10 years. And now we've had the same, GM head coach for a sustainable amount of time. That's almost becoming more than, half of the history of the club, which is, again, we're kind of getting into this territory of we kind of come to expect this every year, which is it's a good thing.
No, and then obviously we're at the end of what we got going on here, so we probably won't dive deep into it as much, but that was something that Chris touched on was what does the future of Pat look like? And he very firmly shut the rumors down or whatever there was. He's like, no, Pat came here with me and we've built this together and we will continue to build this together. So
yeah. And build it they will. We're going to find out, probably over the next week or two. Maybe the holiday, throws a little bit of a wrench into some news, but we'll see what comes out. And we'll have another episode for you guys whenever all of that comes around. But hope you enjoyed tonight. And thanks again for grabbing the shirts. We, again, appreciate that. And we'll see you next time.